The third premise. On entering the fold of Islam, a sort of Israeliyat and a part of Greek philosophy assumed the garb of religion and threw minds into confusion. It was like this. The Arabs had been an illiterate people in the era of ignorance. Then the truth was manifested among them, and their emotions were awakened with all their potentialities. And since they had seen the clear religion open up a way in full view, they focused all their efforts and desires on learning it alone. And they observed the universe not with the dissecting eye of philosophy, but in second place for purposes of deduction. The only inspiration their sensitive natural intuition received was from their expansive, elevated surroundings, which were in tune with their primordial natures, and the only training and education their unsullied, capable innate dispositions received was from the Qur'an. Later, just as the Arabs swallowed up other peoples, so too the knowledge of the other nations began to become Muslim even. By virtue of this, such scholars of the people of the book as Webb and Cobb found a way into the treasuries of the Arabs' imaginings and caused confusion in their unspoiled minds. Later, they were even held in respect, for the scholars of the people of the book who embraced Islam acquired great dignity, and they advanced through its distinction, and their former gilded knowledge became accepted and seemingly incontestable, and it was not refuted. For since it did not clash with the principles of Islam, it was narrated like stories, and because of its unimportance, the Arabs listened without criticizing it. But, alas, it was later looked on as fact and became the cause of many doubts and uncertainties. Also, the Israeliyat could have been source of some illusions of the Qur'an and Sunnah, or by some connection or other, a reference for some of their concepts. But, supposing the Israeliyat had been true, since it was possible that it corroborated aspects of the scriptures' meanings, due to their ill judgments, some literalist scholars, who could find no other source or did not look for one, applied certain verses and hadiths to those Israeliyat stories and expounded them by means of them. However, it is only the Qur'an itself and sound hadiths that can expound the Qur'an, not the Gospels and Torah, whose injunctions have been abrogated and stories even are corrupted. Yes, the meaning of a thing and something that corroborates it are different. But then something that could have corroborated the meaning was substituted for it, and numerous possibilities were confused with facts. Also, in Ma'mun's time, Greek philosophy was translated so as to make it Muslim. But since it had as its source numerous myths and superstitions, it was somewhat putrid and confused to a degree the unspoiled minds of the Arabs when it intermixed with them. So too, it paved the way leading from investigative study to blind imitation. Also, although with their innate imaginative faculties they had the ability to deduce matters from Islam, the water of life, they deigned to become peoples of that philosophy. Yes, just as when their ability to speak truly eloquent Arabic began to be impaired by mixing with non-Arabs, the authoritative scholars codified the rules of the sciences of Arabic so as to preserve them. So too, when philosophy and Israeliyat entered the fold of Islam, some punctilious Islamic scholars attempted to sort them out and purify Islam of them. But alas, they were not altogether successful. But that was not all, for when they endeavored to expound the Qur'an, literalists applied the transmitted knowledge it contains to some Israeliyats and adapted its verses, requiring reasoned interpretation to the above-mentioned philosophy. For they saw that the Qur'an comprises both transmitted and reasoned knowledge. Hadiths are the same. Then they deduced a correspondence and relation between some of the true matters of the Qur'an and Sunnah and corrupted matters of the Israeliyat. And because they imagined similarities and agreement between the matters addressing reason of the former, which are true, and philosophy, which is fallacious and delusive, they supposed that the correspondence and similarities expounded the meanings of the book and Sunnah and elucidated their purposes. God forbid. The criterion of the book of miraculous exposition is its miraculous inimitability. What will expound it is its own parts. Its meaning is within it. Even its shell is of pearl, not cloths. Even if their purpose in disclosing the congruity had been to pronounce fit that truthful witness, it still would have been futile. For the perspicuous Qur'an is far above such pronouncements concerning reasons and revealed knowledge, which have anyway handed over to it the keys of submission, and it stands in no need of them. For if it does not pronounce them fit, their testimony will not be heard. Yes, you have to search for the Pleiades in the skies, not on the ground. And you should seek the Qur'an's meanings in its shells, not in your pocket, which is all mixed up. For you won't find them there. And even if you do, the Qur'an will not accept them, for they will not bear the stamp of miraculousness. For it is established that the true meaning is that which the words empty out in the ear hole, then penetrating the mind, suffuses the conscience and produces copious blossoms of ideas. For if some possibilities have impinged on your imagination due to your preoccupation with other things, or you have filched some futilities from philosophy and fables and stories, and filling your pockets with them have hidden them in amongst the convolutions of the Qur'an's verses and hadiths, then pulled them out, held them up, and called out, the meaning is this, come and take it. If you were to do this, you would receive this answer, come on. This meaning of yours is unclear. It bears the stamp of blind imitation. The assayer of truth will reject it. The Sultan of miraculousness will send the minter packing. You will have transgressed against the orderliness of the verses and hadiths, so they will issue a complaint against you, and the judge of eloquence will imprison your delusions in your imagination. Moreover, the customer for reality will not buy these wares of yours. He will say, these verses' meanings are of pearl, and this is mere cloths. What the hadiths impart is spirit, but this resembles nothing more than a gadfly. An explanatory tale. A literary tale told by the Kurds. There was a man called Allah who used to steal honey. He was told he would be found out, so in order to fool them, he got wild bees to fill up an empty comb and stole honey from somewhere else. This he hid in the hive. If anyone asked him about it, he would say, it is the artwork of my bees, for they are honey engineers. Then, when conversing with his bees, they would say together, you do the buzzing, I provide the honey. Good sir, who makes first interpretations with good appetite, don't find solace in this tale, it's a parable. The meaning you produce is not honey, it's poison. And those words are not bees, they are the words of that consummate book, revealing the spirits of truth to the heart and conscience, like angels. Hadiths are the source of life and inspire reality. In short, to be deficient is harmful as is going to excess. Perhaps it is even more harmful. But going to excess is more at fault since it causes deficiency. Yes, excess opened the door to indulgence. For rotten things had been mixed in with those who love the truth, so the deficient and the unfair cavaliers unjustly felt disgust at the truths, and God forbid deemed them blemished and worthless. But if one defaced coin is found in a treasury, and one rotten windfall from elsewhere is spotted in an orchard, is it right and fair to assume that the entire treasury is false, or all the apples are rotten, and so defame them by spurning them. Conclusion. My aim with this premise. Public opinion wants a new interpretation of the Quran. In every era, one particular thing is dominant. Time too is an interpreter. Situations and circumstances also disclose things. The generally held ideas of the ulama still educate public opinion. In consequence of this, and basing my view on it, it is my wish that a Quranic commentary should be written through consultation by setting up an assembly of deputies elected from among authoritative scholars, each a specialist in one of the physical sciences, under the chairmanship of Time, the supreme interpreter. They should collect together in this commentary in order to yield and amend it the best points and virtues scattered through other commentaries. Yes, this is the time of constitutionalism. Mutual consultation governs in everything. Public opinion is the watchman. The validity of the agreed opinions among the scholars is proof of this. The fourth premise. Fame ascribes to man what is not his. It is like this. It is a human characteristic to ascribe something unusual or precious together with similar things to the person who gains fame through them in order to draw attention to his excellence, in order to gain acceptance for their ideas, or not to have them denied, or for some other purpose. People despotically and wrongfully see in one person the ideas and virtues of a nation and their results, and they think of them as originating from him. He, however, will reject their tyrannical gift. For a person who is famous for some fine attribute or elevated art will reject something unjustly ascribed to his art-loving view, the mark of which is to see beneath the surface. For if it is presented as his own work, it will mar the beauty arising from the proportion and balance of his art. He will decline it and avoid it, exclaiming, "God forbid." In consequence of this characteristic, and in accordance with the well-known rule, if something is established, it is established together with its corollaries in order to set in order the things they imagine in the famous person. People are obliged to ascribe to him extraordinary attributes, such as great power, eminence, and intelligence, so that he can be a source of assistance for all his followers. He is thus embodied in their minds as a marvel. If you like, think of Rustam Zal's image, nourished in the Persian imagination. See what a marvel he is, because he became famous for his courage, and because the Persians were never ever able to free themselves from oppression and despotism. Through the power of fame, he grew and plundered all their means of glory. He was aggrandized and filled their imaginations. Then, since lies breed lies, extraordinary valor was augmented by a wondrous life, an awesome stature, and many other matters that this necessitated. That frightful fantasy cried out, "The whole race is embodied in me." Trailing behind him superstitions like an ogre, he is ever on people's tongues. You who wish to see the naked truth, pay close attention to this premise, for this is where the door to superstition opens. It is also where the door to verification of the truth is blocked up. It is also the salt marsh where the story's moral is lost, and the attempt to build, thanks to the inclination to progress, on the foundations of the earlier scholars is foiled, as are efforts to work on the legacy of the righteous forefathers, and the courage to do more than this is destroyed. If you like, ask the renowned Mullah Nasreddin Effendi, "Are all these strange words yours?" He will of course reply, "If they were, they would fill volumes and need a lifetime at that. For not everything I say is a witticism. I am a teacher. I had been happy if they were to give me the zakat due on them as well. I wouldn't want more, because my wit would cease being natural and become first. Yes, superstitions, and customs sprout and grow from this root, choking the power of what is right. Conclusion: favor greater than divine favor is not favor. A grain of truth is preferable to a stack of illusions. It is obligatory to content oneself with divine favor when making ascriptions. The member of a community should not infringe its regulations. A thing's honor looks to the thing itself, not to its offspring. It is the fruit of a thing that shows its essential character. Even if valuable, mixing other property with one's own makes it worthless, it will also lead to its seizure. Now, basing it on these points, I say the following. It is a serious instance of ignorance to ascribe false hadiths to persons like Ibn Abbas in order to encourage the common people to do what is right and to deter them from what is wrong. Yes, truth stands in need of nothing else, and reality is rich. The hadith's lights are sufficient to illuminate hearts. Sound hadiths, the Qur'an's expounder, suffice us, and we are content with authentic histories which have been weighed up on the scales of logic. The fifth premise: if figures of speech fall into the hand of the ignorance from that of learning, they are taken literally and open the door to superstition. It is like this. Whenever the dark left hand of ignorance seizes figures of speech and similes from the luminous right hand of knowledge, or when such figures are long-lived, they acquire a literal meaning and lose their freshness and translucence. While being a cordial, they turn into vinegar, and through once fresh and calmly they grow old and withered. Yes, it is the transparency of figurative language that allows the rays of reality to shine out from it. Once it is taken literally, it becomes opaque and obscures the original truth. Such a transformation is a natural law. If you want evidence for this, refer to the mysteries of the change and renewal of words and their shared and synonymous meanings. If you listen carefully, you will hear the following. Numerous words, tales, fantasies, and meanings which were to the taste of the people of early times have become old and vapid, since they did not coincide with the childish caprices of the people of later times. They gave rise to the desire for renewal and the idea of invention and bold desire for change. This rule governs in imaginings, meanings, and stories as it does in words, in which case everything should not be judged according to its apparent meaning. The mark of the investigative scholar is to be true, divest himself of the influences of time, enter the depths of the past, weigh up things on the scales of logic, and find the source of everything. What made me aware of this was an eclipse of the moon when I was young. I asked my mother about it, and she replied, "A snake has swallowed the moon." So I asked, "Why can you still see it?" So she said, "The snakes in the sky are semi-transparent." See how a simile had become reality and with its inner position obscured the reality. For employing a simile, astronomers called the intersections of the two acts of the two imaginary circles formed by the moon's orbit and the zodiac the head and tail of the great serpent. Then, when the moon passes either the head or the tail, and the sun passes the other, the moon will be eclipsed by the inner position of the earth. Gentle reader who is not bored with these confused words of mine, study this premise attentively too. Scrutinize it with a microscope, for numerous superstitions and contradictions have been born of this stock. Logic and rhetoric should be taken as the guide. Conclusion: the true meaning should bear a stamp. What defines the stamp is the sheer beauty born of the balance between the aims of the Sharia. Figurative language is permissible if subject to the rules of rhetoric. For to look on a rhetorical figure as reality, and reality as figurative, and to show them thus, is to strengthen the despotism of ignorance. However, harmful the tendency to be negligent, which continually understanding everything literally gave rise to the misguided way of the literalists, so love of excess was even more harmful, for continually interpreting everything figuratively, it gave rise to the feudal school of esoterists. It is only the philosophy of the Sharia and rhetoric and logic and science that will show the middle way and confute the two extremes. I say science because for the greater part it is good. It contains evil, but this is minor. It is an incontestable principle that to abandon a matter which is mostly good because of some minor evil is to perpetrate a greater evil. It is essential to choose the lesser of two evils. Yes, ancient philosophy contained little good. Its superstitions were many. It led to minds losing their capacity to the limiting of ideas due to blind imitation and to ignorance ruling the mass of people. For these reasons, later generations prohibited it to an extent. But relatively to ancient philosophy now, modern science, contains much good from the material point of view. Its lives are pure, thought is free, and learning predominates. In any event, every age has its ethos. The sixth premise. For example, not all the matters mentioned in a Qur'anic commentary have to be commentary on the Qur'an. Knowledge corroborates knowledge. But such matters should not preponderate. It is an established fact that a person skillful in engineering may be unversed in another profession such as medicine. And it is a rule of the science of the principles of religion that the opinions of a person who is not an authority in jurisprudence are not held to be valid by the consensus of the scholars of that science, even if he is a mujtahid in the principles of fiqh, because compared to them his knowledge is deficient. Furthermore, it is an historical fact that one person cannot be expert and proficient in numerous sciences. Only an exceptional person can be a specialist in 4 or 5 sciences. To attempt all means abandoning all. Proficiency in a science is that science's true form. It has to assume its true form through it. For if a person is not an expert in one science and does not use the rest of his knowledge to complete and supplement it, all the miscellaneous things he knows will form an anomalous conglomeration. A humorous yarn to explain this. Suppose there is a portraitist who arrives on the earth from another world. He has seen the entire figure of neither man nor beasts. So, if he wants to draw the picture of a man or a figure out of all the things he has observed, for instance, a man out of one hand, one foot, one eye, half a face, a nose, and a turban, or an animal made up of various things that strike his eye like a horse's tail, a camel's hump, a man's face, and a lion's head, the people will tell him that because of the incompatibility of those things they cannot support life, and such weird creatures do not meet the conditions of life. They will pour scorn on the portraitist. This rule is exactly applicable to the modern sciences. The solution is to take one science as one's main science and to make all the rest of one's knowledge a reservoir and pool for it. Also, it is a constant law that if a single book contains numerous sciences, the sciences will push and jostle each other. For since they will lead to one another and take each other by the hand, they will embrace and answer each other and will therefore be so interwoven that in comparison with the book as a whole, the matters of any one science will be negligible. It is because this question has been disregarded that when a literalist or a sophist sees a matter included parenthetically in a work about the Sharia or a Qur'anic commentary, he declares, "That is the Sharia or the commentary," and holds such matters to be fundamental to the work. If he is friendly, he says, the person who doesn't accept this can't be Muslim. Or if hostile, he makes it a pretext and condemns the work, saying, the Sharia or the commentary is wrong. O you who goes to one extreme or the other. Quranic commentaries and the Sharia are one thing, and books written about them are something else. For books are more extensive. Worthless things may be found in such shops besides the jewels. If you have grasped this, you will be saved from doubts. Just as the necessities of a household can't all be obtained from a single craftsman, but each has to be sought from an expert in the craft needed, so too, in the palace of civilizational achievements, the law in question has to be complied with. Isn't it clear that if someone asks the tailor to sew up his broken watch, he will receive nothing but a blast of invective? Indication. The gist of this premise is as follows. Although it is obligatory to act in accordance with the law of progress, which has been made operative in the world's creation by the glorious Maker and issues from the rule of the division of labor, and to comply with what it infers, this has not been fully observed. It is like this. By virtue of the potentialities and inclinations planted in human nature by the gracious hand of divine wisdom, which necessitates the division of labor, a sort of command has been given to practice the arts and sciences. This is an obligation on a section of the community imposed by the Sharia of creation. But we abused this, and due to our desire for superiority, which is a false ambition and pure hypocrisy, we extinguished the enthusiasm that would strengthen and assist the inclinations born of those potentialities and wasted it. Certainly, the rebellious deserve hell. And we were tormented by the hell of ignorance because we did not comply with the code of natural laws known as creation. But if we act in conformity with the law of the division of labor, we will be saved from this torment. For our forebears acted in accordance with it and entered the paradise of the sciences. Conclusion. Just as a non-Muslim does not become a Muslim by merely entering a mosque, so some matter of a natural science, like geography or history, does not become Sharia or Quranic commentary by being included in a book of the Sharia or a commentary. Also, on condition he is an expert, a ruling made by a scholar of the Sharia or Quranic interpretation is authoritative only in the science concerned. His statements about intrusive matters that have entered works of the Sharia and exegesis without permission are not authoritative, for they are probably just spongers. But those who have related them should not be blamed. Yes, if a person whose words on one science are authoritative holds his rulings on another science to be authoritative by moving them from one to the other, or just as an assertion, it means he is not complying with the divine laws of the division of labor and organization of work. Also, it is accepted in logic that the proposition necessitates the statements of the subject and predicate in only one respect. Others of their statements are not part of that science. They have to be matters of some other science. It is also established that a general statement cannot express a particular one with any of the three significations. For example, it is completely illogical to consider definitive the interpretation of the verse between the two steep mountain sides in the tafsir of Baydawi that refers to what lies between the mountains of Armenia and Azerbaijan. For basically, it's a narration. Also, what it states specifically is not what the Qur'an indicates. Such an interpretation cannot be considered exegesis, for it's a specific statement based on another science about parts of the verse. It is unfair, therefore, to make such weak points a pretext and raise doubts about the well-grounded competence in Quranic exegesis of that masterly commentator. The essential truths of Quranic commentaries and the Sharia are clear. They shine like the stars. Their power and clarity give courage to someone powerless like myself. So I claim that however many fundamental truths there are in the Sharia and in Quranic commentaries, if they are studied closely, it will be seen that each one of them emerges from reality, is weighed up with wisdom, and as truth returns to truth. The obvious points, whatever they are, have appeared from prattling minds which have then modeled them. This is a challenge to whoever doubts the essential truth of Quranic commentaries and the Sharia. Let him step forward and show himself.